the Social Action and Advocacy coordinating teams of CITAM, that is the HODs of Social Action and Advocacy in CITAM. And allow me also again, on behalf of the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, who have also been part and parcel of this team of organizing this economic forum that is focusing specifically on the Finance Bill 2025. Allow me to acknowledge also the EAK, that is the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. And again, also allow me to also acknowledge that is the Kenya Christian Professional Forum, also for working together with the CITAM Social Action and Advocacy Global Team that is also coordinated from the CITAM Social Action and Advocacy Head Office team. So allow me again also to welcome all of you, those of us who are following us online through the CITAM Church Online that has graciously worked with us to make sure that this forum is basically happening as we basically look into the issues that are concerning the Finance Bill 2025. My name is Reverend Evans Agoya. I'm the Deputy Head of Chaplaincy at CITAM Head Office. And even as we look into engaging in this forum that is focusing on the Finance Bill 2025, allow me to also introduce to us our moderator, that is Faith Thuku. And allow me to let you know that Faith Thuku is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a governance professional. Currently transitioning from legal practice into corporate governance space. Again, also she's a certified secretary. She's also a finalist with CASNEP, and she holds a strong foundation in conveyancing and commercial law. And allow me to let you know that Faith is deeply passionate about leadership, good governance, and the role of young professionals in shaping public discourse. She's also an active member of CITAM Karen, and I believe that this is the Social Action and Advocacy team of CITAM Karen, where she serves faithfully as the head of department of the youth ministry. She has served there until May 2025. With her blend of legal expertise, organizational insight, and heart for community and faith brings a balanced and engaging perspective to today's discussion on the Finance Bill 2025. So we welcome all of you, those who are with us here, following us live here at CITAM Valley Road, and those who are following us online. And I believe also in our assemblies, we also have our social media handles that are actively basically projecting this. We welcome all of you, karibuni sana. So allow me to pray with us, even as we prepare to begin this great engagement on Finance Bill 2025. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you. And God, we bless your name because you're a loving God. And so, Father, we thank you for bringing us together again, even as we look into issues that are concerning our Finance Bill 2025. This is an economic issue, oh God. And Father, I pray that even as a nation and even as a church, Father, I believe that your wisdom that guides us through this issue will be very helpful to us. And even as we engage today and look into this issue, Lord, we pray that your knowledge and wisdom and understanding will guide us well. And so, Father, may you be with us and may you be with the panelists, oh God, even as they take us through this process. And so, Father, we bless your name and we worship you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Karibuni sana.
Specific introduction. As he said, my name is Faith, and I'm really looking forward to the engaging discussion that we're going to have this evening. Before I proceed, please drop an emoji based on where you're following us from. If you're watching us on YouTube, or if you're following us on Facebook through our platforms, CITAM Church Online, let me see some emojis over there just to let you know, so that you can let me know that you're together. You can also go ahead and tell us your name and where you're watching us from. And the last thing I'm going to kindly ask you to do is to share that link with someone. Invite a friend to invite a friend. We're going to have a very nice discussion around the finance bill and other things that stem from it. Just to give you a brief roadmap on how today's discussion is going to look like, we're going to have a brief presentation just so that we can be able to understand what is a finance bill, where did it come from, why must we have a finance bill each and every year, and any other question that you may have around the finance bill. So we're going to have someone from the Budgety Hub, and I will shortly be introducing her to give us an opportunity to just interact with these terminologies that we hear, and we'll be able to have a better understanding on it. In the meantime, share the link, subscribe to our channel, and tell a friend to tell a friend. So we'll start off with our presentation from Budgety Hub. This presentation will be brought by a young professional like myself. Her name is Faith Ann Kinyanjui. She's a program officer at that organization, and she is leading the capacity development and learning work. Her work in that institution is geared towards ensuring that non-state actors and citizens in general have the requisite capacity to engage their governments for better service delivery. Faith Ann has over 5 years of experience conducting research and analysis on public finance at the national and subnational levels of the government in Kenya, developing capacity building content, conducting trainings on the budget process, and supporting budget advocacy work. She particularly advocates for credible and inclusive public budgets, and looks forward to a time when public finance and other enabling systems will work for the good of all. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Faith Ann. We have a live audience here, and drop your clapping emojis at the comment section as we give it up for Faith, who holds a bachelor's in science in statistics degree from the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. Faith, karibu sana. So as we set you up, maybe, I hope you're going to tell us if there's a difference between the finance bill and a budget. Is it the same thing?
We can say that the finance bill is a part of the budget.
It's a part of the budget process, and we must have it every single year.
We must have it every single year. We do have it every single year.
Yeah.
But it's not a must that we have it every single year.
Okay, take it away. I look forward to learning from you.
Also preparing their budget.
So they may not yet have approved it because the timeline has not yet lapsed, but your county is also preparing their own budget. And if you're particularly interested in a sector such as health that is largely taken care of by the county governments, then that might be also somewhere else you want to look at. When it comes to how the budget process looks like, we have a very comprehensive budget process in Kenya, thanks to our 2010 Constitution and the Public Finance Management Act and other regulations and laws that came after. So you have a budget process that we can summarize it in 4 stages, right? So you have the budget planning and formulation stage. That is where we come together and we are discussing what are our priorities, what do we want to do in the coming financial year. Then we have the budget approval stage. So this is after we have formulated our budgets, we have agreed, then the budgets have to be approved. And the actors that are responsible for each of these stages, so we have formulation, where we have the national, the executive arm of government being in charge of budget formulation. But then we also have approval, that this role sits with the legislature. So Parliament or the National Assembly in the case of the national level, and in the case of the county level, we have the county assemblies being in charge of approving budgets. So that is a role that county assemblies or the National Assembly at the national level plays. And then the third stage is budget implementation. So we have decided, we have determined these are our priorities, we have agreed, there has been public input, and we have approved these proposals. So we have an approved document or budget that now has to be implemented, which is the third stage. So the third stage of our budgeting process is budget implementation, right? And once the budget has been approved, it goes back to the executive for implementation. So we had the executive prepare, we have Parliament approving, and now it goes back to the executive for implementation. So this is where the state departments, the ministries, the agencies will now be doing what they proposed and has now been approved for them to do. So if it is the Ministry of Health, implementing their programs. If it is the Ministry of Education, implementing their programs. So that is the third stage, which is implementation. The fourth stage is evaluation or audit. So this is where we try and check for value for money. This is where the Office of the Auditor General comes in handy. So we have implemented the budget, the financial year is over, and what next? Did we do everything that we said we'll do? And according to the measures that have been set for us. So think about an organization audit, for instance, or the audit that you do in your other institutions. So the same thing has to happen for government at both levels, that is the national and county government. The interesting thing about this process is that the national and county, as I had mentioned earlier, the processes run concurrently. So as the national government is developing their budget and going through this process, counties are also doing the same thing. You realize something about the stages as well. The 4 stages, they are interdependent. So they do not exist in isolation. So you do not do something during formulation and then you do something completely different during approval and during implementation. So a good example is what we have right now with the budget estimates and all that, and then what we had a few months ago with the budget policy statement. You may have heard of that document as it was being discussed. So the budget policy statement sets certain ceilings, and those ceilings still have to be adhered to when we come to the budget estimates level. So these decisions inform each other and do not exist in isolation. Something interesting is that this entire cycle, the 4 stages, so starting from formulation to audit, it takes about 2.5 years. So it takes about 2.5 years for us to say that we have gone through an entire budgeting cycle. So right now we are for 2025, 2026, which is the budget and even the finance bill as we look at it, we'll be talking about, for the formulation process began last year. So it did not just begin a few months ago or a few weeks ago. So the formulation process began last year. And then when we get to July 1st, we are now implementing this budget for 2025, 2026. And then all the way up to June 30th of next year. And then by December, we'll be auditing that. And within this entire process, there are several opportunities for public engagement. So you have a role to play as a Kenyan citizen when it comes to the decisions that are being made, proposals that are being made. You have a role to play and there are opportunities for us to give input. One of the best things about our PFM system is that it provides for these public participation opportunities. So you'll find that the government is required to publish certain information and documents beforehand and call for public participation before approving or before making a decision. We have seen in recent times the courts, declaring certain things null and void because either public participation was not conducted or it was not conducted in an effective way. So there are several opportunities for us to participate right from the point of formulation all the way to budget implementation and even giving comments on what the Auditor General puts out. So if you want to start engaging with this process from the very beginning, we may be at the tail end of approving the 25-26 budget, but come late August, we'll start the process of formulating the budget for 2026-27. So how the budget process works and how we like to think about it even at Budgeti Hub is that it's more of a conversation. So in August or between the period between August and December, the process starts or kicks off with a circular from the Treasury, and this just outlines certain guidelines on as ministries, departments, agencies are preparing their budgets, this is what they need to take into consideration. So think of it such as an organizational circular or memo. So that kicks off the process somewhere towards the end of August. After that, what follows is a document we refer to as the Budget Review and Outlook Paper. One of the most important things that the Budget Review and Outlook Paper does is that it provides provisional ceilings. So what are provisional ceilings? So think about the Ministry of Health and the budget for the Ministry of Health. So what the Budget Review and Outlook Paper will do is that it will say tentatively in the coming financial year, the Ministry of Health has about, as an example, say 200 million to spend. So this is not cast on stone, it's just a where is the money coming from? If we are not able to sufficiently collect everything within the country, that is tax levies and all that, that is what constitutes ordinary revenue, then where is the extra money coming from if we still have a deficit? If we are borrowing, are we borrowing domestically? Are we borrowing externally? So all these questions are very important. And even when it comes to targets, are they realistic? Or are we just going with the flow, right? So when you look at the expenditure targets, when you look at revenue targets, are they realistic? And finally, what is the public participation process like? So when you think about the Finance Bill 2025 and the public participation process and how that looked like, we saw the committee having hearings here in Nairobi, and also they've also been attempts to go to certain counties to collect views. Is that adequate? Is that sufficient? How would you as a citizen want to be better engaged? So all these are questions that need to be asked, especially around public participation. But even beyond that, has citizen input been considered? So the report of the Finance and National Planning Committee is out. Did they take in input? Did they ignore? And what are the justifications for it? Thank you.
Wow. Let's give it up for Faith. I think she's done an amazing job in trying to contextualize the finance bill to tell us where has this thing come from, why is it important, why do we have this process repeated every year. I think one of my takeaway points is the budget process. I don't think people really talk much about the budget process, but I think it's a bit hopeful for us to hear that it doesn't start and end at the finance bill, that there is a planning stage, there is the approval stage, there is the implementation stage, and we have the stage of accountability. And these are all avenues or stages in the budget cycle that we can all plug into. So let me see some emojis in the comment section for those who are following us on social media or on YouTube. Let's see the clap emojis for Faith Ann. I'm sure we will have a session where we'll have Q&As. So if you do have any questions for her or in relation to the presentation that has been shared, please let us know. In the meantime, we're going to go straight into our panel discussion for today. I am joined by 4 incredible panelists, very well seasoned for this panel. And I will start by introducing one by the name Ngugi Kimani. He is a tax lawyer. He is my senior, so I have to give him respect where it's due. So please join me as put your hands together for Wakili as he comes. He is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and he is specializing in tax advisory and dispute resolution. He is currently practicing with the firm of Denton's HHM, and in his day-to-day activities, he helps ascertain whether what Caesar demands is actually due to him. He has expertise of over 11 years, so I think we have the right person today. So please have a seat, and once again, karibu sana. We have a budget expert by the name of Dr. Abraham Mureo. He is passionate and committed to advancing local development, currently the Executive Director of Budget Hub, formerly IBP Kenya, based in Nairobi, and he has been there since July 2017. He previously worked at an Institute of Economic Affairs from 2007 all the way to 2013 as a public policy and devolution consultant. He has a wealth of experience working in decentralization, participatory governance, and public finance management in Kenya. Daktari here has worked for over the last 19 years and his work has entailed supporting citizens to participate in and advocate for improved service delivery by government, both at the national and local level. This has been through research, policy analysis, and advocacy. He has also participated in facilitating capacity building programs and engaging public education talks. As a contemporary speaker, Dr. Rugo is regularly engaged in training and public talks on topics around governance, public finance management, devolution, spiritual and holistic personal development. He holds a master's and a doctoral degree in public management from the University of Potsdam, Germany, and he is a believer in Christ who also serves as an elder at PCA St. Andrews, Parish in Nairobi. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Rugo. I'm sure we have quite a lot of questions for him. We also have a representative from KRA. His name is Mr. Leonard Cheserem. He is an assistant manager in the Policy and Tax Advisory Division under the Micro and Small Taxpayers Department at KRA. He brings over 8 years of extensive experience in policy development as well as tax advisory, with a core focus on coordinating legislative and administrative tax policy reforms. He has participated in developing legislation to support effective tax law implementation, which has been instrumental in enhancing stakeholder engagement in relation to tax. Mr. Cheserem has served in the Budget Committee at the National Treasury and Economic Planning, where he has played a pivotal role in reviewing a wide range of tax policies. He has also provided support to governments and other stakeholders through capacity building, strategic insights, and technical guidance on tax policy and administration. His contributions have significantly shaped ongoing efforts to enhance Kenya's fiscal framework to promote inclusive and evidence-based policy making. His expertise spans from strategic planning, policy analysis, research, data, and project management. He holds a master's in statistics from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria, and a Bachelor of Science in Applied Statistics, my apologies, from Moi University. He's currently pursuing a PhD at the University of Nairobi. So please put your hands together and let us welcome Mr. Cheserem, soon to be doctor. And we look forward to the insights. It's good to have someone from the agency, and we're looking forward to hearing what he has to say. Last but not least, we have Wachera Thande. She is here to represent the young people. She's a budding social development professional with a passion for social justice. As a self-starter, creative thinker, educator, and social worker, she has over 6 years of experience working with community groups, civil society, academia, governments, international organizations, and the private sector. Her core interest is in co-producing knowledge through participatory research methods to create impactful and equitable projects and social policies. She also has an array of experience in project management and policy research, and she has been able to have a lot of work done in respect to instant payment systems, environmental policy, climate change, urban planning, urban agriculture, youth engagement, racial equality, decolonized education, vitu za nguvu, childhood development, and safeguarding. Guys, put your hands together for Wachera, and she will be here representing the Gen Z. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much. And before we delve into the discussion with my amazing panelists, I'm looking forward to your questions to our audience. We have a live audience in studio, that's why I'm looking at them, but we also have an online audience, so feel free to send in your questions. You can follow us or shoot us a question on Twitter at the CCO platform, that is CITAM Church Online. We are also on Facebook, YouTube, and whichever forum you're following us on. Be sure to send in your questions or comments, and we will be actively engaging. So yes, guys, karibuni sana. How are we feeling? Good? I know it's the evening, so we've been working all day, but we trust that you're going to have the energy to take us through this day. I think my first question is going to be to Wakili, and you can tell us now that the finance bill has been passed by Parliament, and we are waiting for the presidential assent. Is it too late to have this discussion?
Thank you so much. It is not too late to have this discussion, especially, and I would take this from the perspective of maybe taking it from not just for the sake of this cycle, but even on a going forward basis. But as regards the Finance Bill 2025, unfortunately, we are at the very tail end of the process, because as it has been introduced, the budget cycle is usually a continuous process that gets to terminate at the point of, we are now currently at the point of the approval process, whereby now the process actually was with the National Assembly, but now it has already, gotten to the phase of either presidential assent or silence on that act. But either way, whether the president gets to assent to it or not, it will become law within the 14 days if he doesn't assent to it. But for purposes of this year, that is the Finance Bill 2025, it is a little bit late. I mean, it's too late for purposes of maybe getting any input from the members of the public.
All right, all right. And so maybe we can look at the past few weeks, and maybe Washara, you can tell us what has been the reaction by the young people. I think we've seen them very vocal, but not so much about the finance bill. Or are we the ones who are on the wrong platform? We're not hearing them. Maybe you can tell us what has their reaction been, their response, and your insight on that.
Hello? Oh yeah, it's working. So that's interesting. There's a lot that's been going on in the last month. Actually, the last few weeks. I feel like June has been 3 months in one.
I agree.
Yeah. So the finance bill was I remember I started seeing it on social media in May. People have started talking about it, and I think the biggest thing that caught people's attention was the clause where they wanted to get into personal data through M-Pesa and all of those other avenues. But then, unfortunately, there was a lot of abductions that happened, so that conversation moved now towards the abductions. Yeah, so I feel like the conversation could have been there, but I will throw this in there and be I feel like the government purposefully did all of these things to distract us from what was happening with the finance bill. I will say this finance bill is not as punitive as the one for last year. It's a lot less, it's mellow. It's way more mellow than the one from last year. But it also has its own challenges and issues. But yeah, so I feel the conversation was there, just not as strong as last year.
Okay. I think my expectation is that after this discussion, we will be able to see other ways that we can plug into the budgeting process. Now that we've seen it's not, it doesn't start and stop at the finance bill, I think we'll be able to see what other places can we plug into it. And maybe, Dr. Rugo, you can highlight for us some significant changes between the tax finance bill for 2024 and the one that we are awaiting assent for 2025. What are some of the significant changes we've seen?
So thank you very much. And thanks for having us. And I really want to appreciate my colleague Faidan for setting a very good context. I hope at some point we will go a bit more past the finance bill, but let me just limit myself to the finance bill. Because I'll be honest, finance bill should be the least of our worries. Let me contextualize it. So let's start from last year, because that's where you have requested me to start. So last year, our budget was 3.9 trillion. So I like to use figures that we can relate with. So our budget for last year was 3,900 shillings. Mark that. Then the finance bill was to help, and remember, finance bill, as we've been explained to, really amends other taxes or introduces new laws. So it was to raise 346 billion extra, so from the previous year. So, but let me take one step back. So it was 3.9 trillion. The expectation of revenue collection was about 2.7 trillion, so 2,700. Now you can already see the difference. Now out of that 2,700, the existing laws were expected to raise about 2,300. So the 2,400. So the finance bill was to raise the difference. In other words, finance bill is supposed to help you raise more revenue so that then you close the gap between your expenditure and your... So 346 billion is what we expected last year. But then it was withdrawn. And here I would differ with the Wakili Kidogo. The finance bill for last year was actually withdrawn when it was in the president's office, if you recall. So it may not be, if there are significant reasons for it to be withdrawn. If you recall last year, the members of parliament passed it, it went to president for assent. It is at that point that actually it was pushed back. Because it's a political system. But yes, I agree, once it's gone through parliament without any major issues. So this year, Anybody with a guess of how much the finance bill was expected to raise more, is expected to raise more of? Is 30 billion. So that's what tells you the difference. So from 346, and if I were to even go the previous year was 250 billion. Now, it's important also to say, based on our tax measures that are in place, including the finance bills that have been there every year, our income, because that's what finance bill takes care of, has been growing at about, give and take, 10%, year on year. So there's a year we actually used to collect 250 billion. Now, we are expecting this financial year, we are actually expecting to raise about 2.78 or thereabout. Again, to my small figure, 2,800. 1,000 as it were. So you see how significant that difference is. But there's a second significance, is that the finance bill for this year is targeting more on leveraging on what we call administrative efficiencies. So in other words, you notice a lot of things have been, are being moved either from zero rate to exempt. My colleague from KRA will explain those differences. Then you also have a lot of measures that are supposed to be administrative in nature, how long you take in the tax tribunals, when you are. So there are all these measures. But in terms of new measures and how much it's supposed to raise, I think the major difference is just how much it's targeting. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much. Leonard, first you can start by telling us the difference between zero-rated and tax-exempt, because people keep throwing that word all around. But I also see that you have keen interest in the micro enterprises. So maybe for that person who has a business, can you tell them how this bill is going to affect them? The person who runs a computer shop in town and they're selling, computers, servers, your kawaida kind of person. How is this bill that is about to become law going to affect them in the coming year?
Okay, good evening. I think thank you for my colleagues, the panelists who have set a good stage in terms of the issues on finance bill and even how it relates with what we have in the budget. So basically, I think the overarching aspects has been given by my fellow panelists in terms of basically the difference even from coming in from the finance bill of 2024 and finance bill of 2025. Now, I've been asked a very simple question. So what is the difference between exemption and in terms of exempting or zero rating? When you look at this one basically affects the VAT law. So when we are dealing with zero rating and exempting, we are basically dealing with how do we treat certain supplies or certain goods and services in terms of in respect to exemption and zero rating. Basically, when you look at the general principles on how a VAT act should be or a VAT law should be, is that when we are dealing with exports, basically you should zero rate them, because basically it's the principle that we are dealing with what we call a destination principle, which is basically that it will be taxed on the other side. When it goes to the other customs of another jurisdiction or another country, then when it's being received or being imported in that country, then it's taxed in that country. So why you tax at a 0%, which is basically zero, which is zero rating basically, because we have only two rates. We have 16%, which is a standard rate, and 0%, then exempt is not a rate, basically. So the second thing about zero rating is that when your product is zero rated, basically you will have to claim all the VAT that you've incurred for producing that item. So if you're producing, for example, bread, basically there are a lot of things or ingredients or whatever that you use to manufacture that bread. So you will have electricity coming in, you will have, maybe you have a commercial building that you've rent, you will have water, probably you've bought water to mix, and many other things to make the bread. So when you're making the bread, you incur VAT on these other supplies that makes this component that's bread. That is what you claim, because you are being, the final product is taxed at 0%. So it means there's a difference between 0 and 16% of that, whatever that you've incurred. So basically, I will assume that if the bread is, you're selling it at 100, then basically there's a certain factor that basically you'll have to claim back from the government to get back the expenses, which is a VAT expense that you incurred during the production of that bread.
Now, when you talk about exemption, exemption basically is that you don't claim back the VAT that you've incurred when you're producing that bread, basically, which means what eventually happens is that either the manufacturer, in this example, will have to absorb that cost, or the manufacturer will decide to pass the cost to the next final consumer, which is you who is buying the bread, with a certain margin, small, just to cover the costs, because the manufacturer has to incur all that cost in terms of VAT, basically. That's what happens, basically. Okay. So you will take an example, something that, because if you take an example, bread is 100 shillings, VAT is 16%, that's 116. So this person that is getting the bread must get the difference in the VAT, basically, when you're dealing with zero rating. But when you're dealing with exempt, you don't actually get back your VAT that you've incurred in the inputs that you use to manufacture this bread. That's the difference. And that's the international best practice, basically, is that we need to zero rate whatever that's going out of the country, not within, but you can use it for essential supplies within the country. Okay. That's basically the biggest difference. I know people will go for zero rating because their manufacturers will claim back. And I know my colleague has said finance bill is not the biggest problem, and I want to agree also with him from coming from a perspective from the government side.
Yes.
I'll tell you an history some years back. You know, when bread was moved from exempt to zero rating, actually the bread cost did not, the price of the bread did not change. Rather, the quantity changed. Quantity.
The number of slices.
The number of slices changed. So you wonder if the government is giving you such an incentive for you to benefit the final consumer, because VAT is paid by the final consumer. Yes. That's the consumer, basically. So that's what happens in our, when we're dealing with all these issues in terms of taxation. Now, coming back to the real question now on basically you're asking me, how will the finance bill basically likely to affect a person who is maybe a small taxpayer? Yes. So basically, when you look at the bill, basically, generally, there is no big, what I can say, there is no significant issues that are likely to arise, specifically when we're dealing with small taxpayers. Why I say that? Because the government is just trying to streamline certain issues, like what Dr. has said here is basically moving some things from zero rating to exempt, basically, like things like animal feeds, pharmaceuticals. But when you also read the answer, basically those things are not likely to change, basically, because from what the parliament have just been arguing or have been considering, some things are likely to remain basically unchanged. Significantly, some of the things are likely to remain unchanged. So it's only a few areas that the parliament have tried to address, moving some of the items to to exempt rather than zero rating, but they have retained other things that they feel it's really beneficial to either the manufacturers or certain sectors, specifically probably the bottom-up economic agenda, which is the better, basically just to still support some of those issues that the government had put in place some years back. Some were put as 2023, some as 2022, and just basically to still support the government. In terms of what really affects the micro and small taxpayers is there are only a few changes basically here and there. And one of them is that when you're dealing with startups, for example, the government has given an incentive for startups, for example. And these startups are specifically, I don't know if we will call them micro, but basically to help in what we call Nairobi International Finance Center, where if you're a startup and you invest some money, the government will give you a lower rate of 15% of corporation income tax for the next 3 years and subsequently 4 years. So basically, which means if you're interested in something we call financial services, those are insurance, they are those things we call qualified activities by the Nairobi International Finance Center, then you can qualify for those kind of reduced, basically reduced rates for specifically when you are dealing with startups. But when you look at income tax, basically, another thing that has also happened is that the DAT rate, what you call digital assets tax, is being actually moved from 3% to 1.5%, which I think these are people who are either in the informal sector, and these are people who are small in nature. We can call them, these are people who are not really high net worth. These are people, the normal kawaida people who can really investing in cryptos and many other things. They will enjoy actually a lower rate of digital assets tax. Now, there are other small things like when you are dealing with there are also those things. I don't know if this is also for a small person, is when you're dealing with mortgage, those who are employed, small jobs, basically, when you're employed, basically, you will also enjoy mortgage relief in constructing your own residential building, which was not there before. It was only when you are purchasing or you are improving that residential building that you get from mortgage. When you get mortgage, then the law allows you that you can claim up to 360,000 in a year in terms of interest expense. So it means you incur because the interest that you incur on mortgage loan is very expensive. So the government gives you up to a maximum of 360,000 in a year. So basically, just to allow you to ensure that you also claw back some of the challenges that you encounter because of the expense of interest that comes in with mortgage. So I think we can discuss many other things as we go on through the presentation, but basically there are other things also that were done in December 2024. I know those who have heard of what we call electronic tax invoice management system, where if you are a small taxpayer, then and your turnover is not in excess of 5 million, basically the law allows that now the person who is purchasing from you should issue you actually an invoice. It should give you what you call buyer-initiated invoice, which means you don't create the invoice yourself because you're a small taxpayer. And the invoice is created by the person who is purchasing your products. Basically, take an example of somebody who is dealing in avocado, for example. If you are the farm, and then the aggregator on the other side should actually generate invoice on your behalf, and so that you fulfill the requirements of the law. Which is the ETIMS basically. So basically what we have in the law is more administrative in nature, and that's what Dr. has alluded, is more of administrative, more of streamlining the process that we have internally, and making sure that if we can improve in terms of efficiency, then I think it can really better what we are doing as government, basically.
Okay. I like that. I think the discourse on the finance bill, some of those issues were not brought out, and people don't want to paint it in a good light. But maybe Wakili, you can tell us are there any other hidden things that, in your opinion, they do not align in terms of aligning with the maxims of tax administration, or just the constitutional provisions of public finance and human rights in general?
Thank you. Before I answer that question, allow me to just answer,
Sure.
to provide a clarification to Daktari's point. It is true, the Finance Bill 2024 was not enacted into law because the President did not assent to it. But what happens is that if the bill has progressed to the President for assent, if he does nothing to it within 14 days, it becomes law automatically. If he doesn't want it to become law within the 14 days, he then sends back a memorandum to the National Assembly, and actually he did so, and proposed that all the clauses in the Finance Bill 2024 be deleted, and that's how it has had its fate. Coming to the question as to whether there are some inconsistencies and some aspects of human rights arising from the provisions of the Finance Bill, allow me to mention the only one that I foresee, or rather that has generated a lot of heat, has been the one that related to granting carry powers to access personal data, and definitely from an entity or company's perspective, trade secrets cutting across board. So fortunately, that proposal, we saw the Finance Committee proposing that proposal be dropped, and the KRA to comply with the provisions of the Data Protection Act. And I think that is a welcome move, because granting the Act did not get to delineate what is accessible personal data. Is it everything or all and sundry? If I'm making a transaction, or rather if money gets into my bank account, into my M-Pesa, you saw the heat that it generated all across, guys trying to say that, okay, where do you put the, where is the line? When does Thank you.
Yes, I think we're back.
So that was the main issue touching on the aspect of human rights. Coming from the perspective of inconsistencies, there's this provision about, tax invoice. The finance bill proposes that a tax invoice has to be issued for all nature of supplies, whether taxable at the zero rate, or at the standard rate of 16%, or even for exempt supplies. Initially, that requirement was only restricted or limited to, issuance of a tax invoice on taxable supplies. Now, the finance bill has proposed the deletion of that aspect of taxable supplies to include, or rather, to a supply, which would essentially cover all sorts of supplies. Some questions arises with respect to that, and this boils down to the metrics or the nature of VAT. And I would single out the issue of registration, VAT registration threshold under the VAT Act, that is Section 34. When you state that a supplier is required to issue a tax invoice on account of any supply, is it that you are introducing, a lower level or an all-encompassive, all-inclusive nature of registration? Because essentially what should happen is that if I'm issuing a tax invoice, I should do so through the ETIMS. That is the electronic tax invoice. I think that was even the observation of the Finance Planning Committee in its report that was submitted to the House. I think if it doesn't sit well when we are talking about a registrable threshold under Section 34 of the VAT Act, which is the primary act, which sets or which requires a taxpayer who intends to make a taxable supply, of at least Kenya shillings 5 million to register for VAT. That is the registrable threshold as we already get to know it. But now, there is this new requirement that even for services that are exempt, those that one did not require to issue a tax invoice, the same have, to be issued, or rather one has to get to issue an invoice. There seems to be some sort of inconsistency, although one might argue that it is far-fetched, but we expect and anticipate some disputes to arise from that. Although I understand the rationale, that the rationale is to try and monitor those taxpayers who are within the turnover tax regime to be able to monitor their, daily or monthly sales on a real-time basis. That in itself gets to raise some issues, and maybe we anticipate some disputes to be able to arise from that.
Okay. Let me just, add something really quickly. All I've heard from him is that the government is very keen to monitor what money comes in and what money comes out. But all other sectors, these issues, I feel like there's the only government organization that is a very well-oiled machine. I'm sorry to say this, but it's KRA. But if you go to the health sector, matatizo. Ukienda education, issues. You go these issues, constant issues. But this one, the way he's saying, there's so much effort being put into seeing how much money is coming in and going out, which again, we can go into discussing the politics of how money is power, etc. And it raises a lot of questions. So you're monitoring us as the majority because we are citizens of this country. But what about the big businesses? What about the politicians who have alleged big businesses? What about the people who have amassed a lot of wealth? Do they also get the same scrutiny as the rest of us? And as you were saying with the issue with KRA monitoring our personal transactions on M-Pesa, it brings up the thing of data protection. Kenya has a very robust data protection law, correct me if I'm wrong. But again, okay, e-government, we've reached a point where they don't care about the courts, they don't care about the state of, they don't care about the law. So people will go to court. I know the 2023 finance bill was considered unconstitutional. The NGCDF as well was also considered unconstitutional, but life goes on as normal. So I'm anyway, those are the other type of things that run in our minds as young people. And I get that our focus of the conversation right now is the finance bill, but what happened last year with the 2024 finance bill, it was a tipping point of all the issues in the government. It's not because we just somehow woke up and you're I'm interested in taxes. We don't care about taxes. We all pay taxes. When you go shop in your shop, you pay taxes. But it wasn't something that we thought about until people started breaking it down. And they were we go to hospitals, they're not working. We go to the education sector, it's not working. Then, on top of that, you want to tax us even more. We pay more money to you to run a system that's not working. So, our grievances as the young generation is that the finance bill was a representation of the broken system that is this country and the lawlessness that is in this country. So yeah, just to shift, because I feel like we're talking, hey, you guys have talked about technical things, man.
So Ashara, do you think there's hope? I mean, of course, there is a vehicle that is used to get to a destination, and maybe the finance bill was what was used to highlight the injustices. And we will come back to discussing the issues about the finance bill and the tax and the economy at large, because I know one of the drivers to people speaking out was the pressure, the economic pressure on people. You're not able to afford your common needs, school, help, all those things. So my question to you is, do you think there's hope?
I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation in church means there's hope. So that's one step. A bit late, as we had said, like the president is probably going to sign and assent this finance bill. There is hope also because as young people, we've created different ways of public participation. Public participation is no longer about, I don't know, Mheshimiwa was going to town centers or whatever the process was before. We can do it online. Njeri was abducted the other day because she created a digital
website,
tool, to be able to submit emails, which the government the other day was like, that's all spam. So, so like, we've reached a point where we are using, you know how Sidri government is talking about, we want to digitize e-citizen, we want to digitize this, we want to use AI and all of that. So us, when we do it, it's an issue. But like, so we're changing the way public participation is happening. We are changing the way we are interacting with the law, the way laws are being created. I feel like what happened last year also shifted our perspective. For the longest time, I didn't know you could participate. Yeah, a lot of us didn't know you could participate to implement laws. But then you end up finding there's a lot of social media pages where young people are actually telling you, by the way, today is the first hearing of this bill that's going to be passed in parliament. Submit your proposal, submit what you think needs to be submitted. So yes, there's hope because people are doing that work that wasn't being done before, visibly. So it's no longer just our parents who are talking about laws, even us, we're talking about it, Yeah,
and I mean, now that we are talking about the finance bill and that, there's a term I had recently called tax justice. Tax justice. I'll invite Leonard to tell us a bit about that. I think we've had information in the public domain. People are like, KRA only going for guys who have a pay slip. They're the only ones paying affordable housing. And then there's outrage because people are like, if I am paying housing levy, then so let the mama mboga be taxed, let the avocado farmer be taxed. So, and it's a sensitive topic because, we have a wide gap between the rich and the poor. But what is KRA doing to ensure that there's tax justice and also to ensure that even as they engage with the public, you do not have a hostile situation? Yes.
Thank you, moderator. So, yes, I know there is a big issue when you talk about tax justice, because basically when you talk about the principle of tax justice, basically is that basically it aligns with what we have in Article 201, which basically that the taxation burden should be shared equally and fairly. So basically, when you look at it from that angle, then the principle aligns that even for us as KRA, we need to collect taxes across the board. We shouldn't say that taxes are only payable by the law, by the bottom, or only by the middle class or by the upper class. So when you're talking about tax justice, basically is that to ensure that everyone pays fairly and we share the burden equally. So what KRA is doing basically is that, I know you've said that for those who have been with payslips, you find it is a bit easy to collect, to get money from them because they are within the formal system. And the challenges that we have in Kenya is that if we look at our informal sector, which contributes to about 40% of the GDP, you realize that the taxes that we collect is about 13.8, 14% of the GDP. So what does that tell us? Basically, that there's a huge sector that basically is untapped. And that's why the government, even with the pronunciation of budget statement by the CS, is basically, there are certain sectors which basically have not contributed what we can call significantly to that landscape in terms of tax collections. So, and this is a huge segment. And basically, when you look and when you hear people outside there, you realize that I know some will say the rich are not being taxed, but also remember that also there is also a huge segment that also they are not really contributing significantly to the burden, to this burden that we are talking about. And one of those sectors is informal sector. And all of us know it, that we have a challenge in the informal sector, basically. And the informal sector, I don't want to mention who they are, but I know basically people know. There are those people, basically the small people who have kiosks, the farmers, but they pay taxes in different ways. But there is what we call, when we talk about tax justice, we're talking about basically how can we get tax fairly, equally, specifically from their income taxes. You remember that for VAT, you can pay because it's easy, because it's consumption taxes. So it's across the board. You go to a supermarket, you buy tea leaves, VAT will be there. You go somewhere, you buy this, VAT is there. So basically we're talking about income taxes, which means this is now, this is one of the indicators that tells us as a country, how are we even improving issues, or how are we dealing with issues of inequality and inequity? And yes.
I have a question. So I know the informal sector is basically a sector where you can't follow where the money has gone. Now my question is, with the corruption that is in this country, we can't follow where that money has gone. Does that also account as the informal sector? Are you also creating mechanisms to tax those people who are making money in conspicuous ways, or especially like government officials who they get into government and their, what is the GDP version for a human being? Their net worth increases.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now my question is, like, if we're using the terms of formality and informality, what happens to those people who usually pay for things via cash? Do they pass on the tax burden now to the person that they've sold to? So like, let's say, for example, I'm a corrupt politician, I have a business in agriculture, and I want to go buy, I don't know, those big tractors. So I go to this shop, and I buy the tractors, but I buy it in cash. So who carries the tax burden in that situation? Is it the seller or the person who's buying? Because now they've given it in cash, like, so what happens?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was coming to just explain from both ends. I know there's what we call the high net worth, and there's also what we call the informal sector part of it. So I'll explain on how probably KRA has been doing, because when you look at it from this point, I'm going to only to speak on issues to do with tax administration. Of course, there might be some policies in it, just to try and address all these things. I understand there's a big challenge. Even if we are dealing with tax justice, there's something that is coming out that is very strong, what we call tax morale. As you say, that these people that have taken money from this side of the government, and yet basically you're not seeing anything out there. Basically, you're not seeing anything from the expenditure side, how the money has been spent. Then it gives us a big problem on what you call tax morale. Even you yourself, as Madam Tande, how will you be willing to pay the taxes when you see some of those kind of injustices happening, even as a church and many other things? So, and that creates a lot of issues on our morale and willingness to pay even the taxes. Now, coming into the issues now, what has KRA been doing basically to address all these things? I'll speak it from two sides. One is from the high net worth side, which what Madam has alluded here, and then secondly from the side of informal sector. When you're dealing with basically the high net worth, the government has various tools that are put in place. I know you've heard of Financial Reporting Center, which the government monitors the money, illicit and many other things. There are also multilateral agreements that Kenya has signed, because KRA has really participated in international, making sure that we are able to be in this platform, because remember, we are in a global world where everything now is like, we're just in Kenya. And one of the biggest things that we're using as a tool is that we call it exchange of information tool, which basically that if we have this kind of people who have stashed money somewhere outside the country, then we are able to receive information, basically, because we exchange information with partner jurisdictions that have also signed into this kind of an agreement. This is one of the, what you call multilateral instruments that we use. Secondly, we also have what we call country-by-country reporting, basically, which means if we have also these big companies or people who are investing in these big companies and they're putting their money and shifting their money out of the country and those kind of things. So we have those kind of tools that also we have put in place to make sure that they report at the end of the financial year, basically, to make sure that we know some of this information, basically. We also have strengthened also, I'm looking at this from a point of high net worth, which means there are also multinationals, individuals with a lot of money within a certain threshold, because sometimes you put a threshold to say who can we call is a high net worth, for example. And government also has a lot of digital things to monitor, because we also we have been having an office which you call the Premier Office, basically, which deals with high net worth. We deals with high net worth, which there are not many people. Maybe we know in Kenya there are about 1,000, 7,000, but I know in our records I think we have recorded like 1,000 of them in our records. Basically just to try and bring them into the tax bracket, because the idea basically is that to make sure that we address the issues of tax injustice, that to bring everyone on board. This thing doesn't happen on a single day. It's a process that you need to take into, and you continue digging in, getting information from your partner jurisdiction, getting information even from the business registration, from FCR, that's the Financial Reporting Center, getting information from whatever data that we use, because we use various sources of data as well. Like we can even use the KPLC data, we can use any other data, even IFMIS data from the National Treasury, because they are paid in contracts, for example. Then going by that also, I know the lawyers here will tell you that government implemented on what you call beneficial ownership, basically registries, to make sure that we know who is the individual behind a certain company. If you are getting a contract, then the government has put in a mechanism that we need to have these companies become transparent, not opaque, the way it was. And it is one of the critical things that government of Kenya put in place because of international requirements, also in ensuring that we unmask basically who are the final individuals who own certain companies, basically, so that we are able to know even their tax obligation and many other things. And then there are also issues basically on what the government are doing also is that for purposes of tax justice, we also need to know what kind of expenditures in terms of tax expenditures, who are they going to? Basically, because the government incurs what you call tax expenditures, which means they are either we're giving exemptions on certain products for them to do whatever they want to do, maybe manufacturing and many other things. The government publishes some of these reports just to ensure that, and some of them are submitted to the Auditor General, basically, every quarter. That's by law. Just to ensure that those information are also known, who is it going to, basically. And I know there was a time also the parliament wanted to make sure that that process goes to them, basically. They approve on each of those exemptions that comes in, just for them to know who is it going to, basically. So there are those kind of things that we are putting in place, systems and all this information, just to ensure that we dig in. There was a time, I know you had it, is it 2023? I know you say that KRA is watching your social media. And some of you were posting bills and saying, let's see if KRA will come to us, for example. And there were those kind of things. But we're using those kind of information. I will even tell you that there was a time we were using even, when you go to the newspaper, you know, estates that they put in newspapers, for example. Yes. Somebody that died. You know, we also look at those some of things, not in a good way. Because these things realize, at the end of the day, it goes back to what we call an estate management. You know, estate management, basically, which means you are looking at all kind of information that can help you know, basically. But remember, you know, when you die, you don't go with your taxes. Your taxes remain here.
You must pay your taxes even in death.
Because we call it basically, what we can call it, okay, there are two things in life. One is just death and taxes. There are only two things. And then secondly, not in a bad way, when you die, there are always processes that continues after you die. So it doesn't stop. That's why we have lawyers coming in with the estate, coming into another mechanism. And those are the processes that are there. So you have to look at all this information so that you don't miss out on some of these things that probably you've not been seeing it when you are dealing with. Somebody can be compliant in the system, but basically that person has not been paying the right fare of taxes. Now, let me look at the bottom side of it now, where you've talked about now, these people are using the cash, basically. How do we deal with them, basically? I know this is a very tough question. Very tough question. And one of the things that KRA did recently is that we formed a new department, basically, for micro and small taxpayers. A whole new department for micro and small taxpayers. So this is a department where I am, but I'm in policy, but this is basically a department that tries to go now what you call KRM machinani in a way, kind of a framework where we need to use a lot of facilitative kind of approach. We need to use a lot of outreach. We need to use a lot of education because we need to people to understand their obligations. We need to also to come in with various simplified mechanisms of framework. For example, when you're filing your return, how to make it simple for you? Can you do it on an SMS? Can you do it in a simple way? Even when you're looking...
Yes, because, hey,
Yes.
sorry, but that iTax thing is complicated.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And
simplifying
yes,
it is
yes.
very good for everyone, not just the people at the bottom.
No, we are doing all across. Even now, and I know for those who are employed and they only have employment income, you don't need to go to the long process.
Yeah.
Everything is in the system.
Okay.
And it makes it simple. And that's what Career over the years has been trying to improve and make their process efficient. I know for those, maybe Dr. will tell you, those years, I'm not talking about you, you're still young. She's still young. For those who were there so many years, 10 years, 15 years ago, they will realize that there has been tremendous change. And even Dr. said yes that we used to collect 250 billion. We are collecting now about 2.7 trillion Kenya shillings. And those are transformational changes. And KRA is putting in leveraging on technology, using the mobile network, even using this eCitizen, just simplifying everything. Even for those who are dealing with VAT and e-teams now, you find that everything is auto-populated in the system. It's only you to check and confirm. And some of these things, that's what KRA is moving to make sure that we're able to bring everybody on board. Even the use of ID instead of PIN now. And we are trying also to find a way how we can use your mobile phone instead of the email, basically. Just to make sure that the communication is easy. Communication is, everything that we are doing also is just re-engineering all these kind of processes. Just to ensure that we even have things like chatbots to help those who are not able to, because we are living in a generation where 70% are youth. What do you expect to do with? Because the 30% are the others who are here, a few who are here, but 70% are youth. So you need to also go in a direction where they are able to relate in terms of what they need to do. Because if you give Madam Tandaya things to do with chatbot, it's very easy for them to manipulate. But you cannot give to the show in the village and all those things. So basically that's what KRA is doing to make sure that at the end of the day, everyone pays taxes fairly. But basically it's more an administrative measure.
Yeah.
Of course, policies we have a lot of things that is done in the policies, and it will always continue to being reviewed. Policies cannot stand a test of time, maybe 10 years from now, 5 years from now. But what we need to do progressively is just to recruit more, expand our base, have everyone on board. And at the end of the day, we have a progressive country where everyone is contributing whatever small share it is there. Then what remains now is for the rest of you to do, which I know Madam Tandea said, is that for you now to just have your vigilance in place now, which means you need to do now transparency and accountability being a biggest issue rather than what we have in terms of revenue. And I know that's where biggest issue is. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you for that. I think that has been a really, at least for me, I've learned a lot, especially about tax justice. And I know it's not something that can be achieved in a year or two, but it's good to hear that that KRA is actually very intentional about trying to bridge that gap that we're seeing. Allow me to just give a shout out to a few people who are watching us online. Team Zoom, you people are doing an amazing job. I see you shared that link. We're just about 500 people streaming, devices rather. You could be more watching, but 500 devices. Thank you so much even for the people on YouTube, the team at Facebook. I see you. Please keep sharing those links. Keep asking your questions. I'm going to sample a few comments, and I'll also assign some of the questions that we've received to our panelists, and they'll be able to answer. I see Linda is asking, what in the budget caters for the amount of money or the expenses that we see politicians giving? I think that I'll just have to throw to our budget expert, Daktari. You can tell us. I think that falls, I don't know if it's between implementation or accountability, but you can tell us a bit about that. I see Evanson saying that there's an issue about the tax on cars and vehicles, and I've seen someone else asking the same question. That is James asking about the difference where they're saying that KRA will be levying a higher tax on smaller cars compared to Guzzlers, and is that tax justice? Leonard, you can take that for us. Moses, thank you for your comment. I also see Moses Minor asking about challenging a bill that has already been passed by the president. And it's a long comment, but I'll just sample a bit. The president can refuse to assent to it and ask Parliament to address this concern. And if this applies to all bills among the latest ones, such as the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Bill, I think that was just a comment based off when we're talking about the assentment of the bill. Someone else, Benson, says that there's a lot of unfairness and there's no tax justice. He mentions the affordable housing and says that that employed people are suffering. And I think Leonard has already answered on that, saying that they will follow you until death to ensure that you do not go with your taxes. Kosgei Alvin, thank you for your comment. You have asked whether KRA feels, or whether the panelists feel that there has been sufficient engagement by citizens with the consequential questions on finance and the budgeting process. Maybe Dr. you can take that as well. Since you're in that space, are we doing a lot in terms of engaging, or do we just talk when it comes to the finance bill, but the rest of the budgeting cycle, we are quiet about that? And yeah, I see you, Linda. Linda says that the government has perfected the art of tumetenga, and saying that we are using or putting up systems. Maybe I'll challenge Linda and say that, you know, as a church and as Christians, we have been called to be accountable to the government as well. So we lead by example. So even if they're saying tumetenga, let us lead by example, even as we put them on their toes, which is what we are doing right now, and which and is what we intend to do in the near future. We have Moses Wanami saying that tax justice, the law is very clear about taxation, but why do we have more deduction after pay in our income? Does this not amount to double taxation? Wakili, maybe you can take that for us. And yes, I see someone else asking a question. At what age are senior citizens supposed to be exempted from paying taxes? I am 84 and still paying tax on the small rent that is supposed to be my upkeep. I think the philosophers in the room can ask themselves, is that justice for the old to be paying taxes in their old age, 84? Yes, no? Tell me what you think on the comment section. Let me hear your comments. If you think it's justice, thumbs up. If you think it's not, thumbs down. But I think Leonard can also tell us.
Maybe you can take that one.
Sorry?
Taxation. You can take that one again on double taxation.
The taxation. At what age are senior citizens? The previous one.
One for PE, where after PE is
Okay,
still tax.
so the law is very clear about taxation. Why do we have more deduction after pay in our income? Does this not amount to double taxation? So I think we may need a bit more context on that. But I know maybe you can tell us, is it fair to pay tax in pay and then you're still paying VAT? I think what they're asking is that there are so many taxes. Is it fair, or does that amount to double taxation? So Akili, maybe in your response you can tell us what actually double taxation is. So I think we can take those questions as they are. Washera, don't worry, I have a question for you coming up. And shout out to the team at Twitter. We see you, we see your engagement. Thank you so much. I think we'll start with Wakili and then we'll just go around like that. Thanks.
Thank you. With respect to the question on whether deductions after PAYE amounts to double taxation, I think I can understand what they're asking in terms of the way your payslip looks like. First of all, you get to suffer PAYE on account of employment income, and then there are all these other kind of deductions and levies that are imposed on the same base, base salary. Say for instance, if you are talking about you earning 100,000, and PAYE is subjected on that amount, then you might find that for purposes of affordable housing levy, if you don't have any other than ordinary kind of income that recurs monthly, we still subject that 100,000 to affordable housing levy. Then we still subject the same 100,000 to shisha or whatever. Then all kinds of other, deductions, ultimately resulting in that, that little amount that you take home or your disposable income. That question has definitely gotten to arise at the highest level, even in the court system. And I think the decision has been that these are separate kinds of, deductions and levies and impositions. And there's no way, if you look at the way the law is worded, there's no way that can be deemed to be double taxation. But the fact remains that, seriously, it's the same base salary that you are subjecting to these deductions. So in as much as the courts have taken that kind of, political, in quotes, decision, it is still the same base salary you are still coming after. And then what happens to that person who relies on that employment income? That is why there is a hue and cry from, the employed persons that they feel like over and over again, the pay slip is still, diminishing, or rather, whatever I'm taking home is still reducing day in, day out. And as Leonard has said, there are various efforts to try and get to the informal sector and the high net worth individuals. So the feeling is that if the government does not get to, those two levels, whoever gets to suffer is the, here in between. And more so, the employed persons, because the Revenue Authority or the National Treasury will forever keep coming back to the payslip, adding all kinds of levies and deductions. And I am damn sure, were it not for the issues that arose with respect to the Finance Bill 2024, most probably would still have expected the government to come for the payslip again, were it not for the skirmishes that happened and were it not for the public scrutiny that we have experienced in the days leading to the Finance Bill.
Okay, Council, could you then explain to us what double taxation is? As it is right now, what is double taxation?
Okay, double taxation essentially occurs where you find that an item of income has been subjected to tax twice in the same hands. In the same hands. Say, for instance, and by suffering tax, I would be quick to note that the term tax has been, the courts have tried to define the term tax, and they have stated that levies are not taxes. Okay. Say, for instance, the case applied with housing levy, whereby they held that affordable housing levy, the question of double taxation arose on account of affordable housing levy, and they held that this is not a tax, this is just a levy. But then, in as much as you coach it as a levy or a tax, it doesn't matter. The implication on the payslip is the same, is that it is reducing the take-home amount. But that is the flimsy definition. Unfortunately, that is the pronouncement by the highest court in the land. And I guess that's what has been fixing us, as it still fixes us unless and until the Supreme Court gets to review that. So unless now one was to indicate that, okay, you are subjecting me to affordable housing levy, and I will give an example, or I may not just give that example because it will result into issues, and I know I might get into trouble here trying to answer hard questions. Whereby you get to show you are subjecting a person take home a gross salary to affordable housing levy, and at the same time, there is another levy that is coached or has the same implication like affordable housing levy, or one that is so closely related to that that you are still being subjected to. Say, for instance, if the government decided, or rather, if the government ran out of ideas, or rather, out of things to tax, and then they decided, okay, let us now move from, or rather, let us retain affordable housing levy and come up with something else to, create new levy to just, maintain compounds around the affordable housing that we are making, then if at all it has an inclination, or rather if it has any sort of, takes the color and form of affordable housing levy, then one can get to argue that that is double taxation on account of those two taxes. Okay. But with respect to income taxes or VAT and what have you, I don't think that will amount to double taxation because, as we know, or rather, taxes are imposed by statute, and any state can impose whatever taxes it intends to impose, it is one of the entitlement as regards the sovereignty of a country. Of course, having regard to all the other aspects that we are discussing about equity, Bill of Rights and what have you. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, you had, sorry, you
Yeah,
had a
I
follow-up
had
question.
one thing to say. So last year I was unemployed, that's why I was able to go for the protests. This year I'm employed, so I don't know if I'll be able to go for the protest. And let me tell you, I saw my first pay slip and I was like, I don't understand why you guys are not in the streets. Because I saw my first pay slip and I was like, what do you mean all of this money is being taken away? And the fraction of the services I'm getting is a well-working KRA system. That's all I get. It didn't make sense. And I feel like that's the essence of what that person was saying. Like, you're paying so much, yet services are so little. Niki dogo. There's shift that's not working. Education isn't working. You go, the roads have potholes, especially in Nairobi, oh my goodness. There's no drainage, it's like things are not working. So I feel like the pain of a lot of people is a reality that you're paying so much and you're getting so little in return.
And that's a tax justice issue, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but yes.
There's something I just wanted to add from what Wakilia said, basically, is that, yes, I think there was some point where there was a bit of double taxation last year, but I think was corrected in December. Basically, where now everything is, first you net off from your payslip before you tax. So like now the issues like the way pension does, the affordable housing, the SHIV, those things are, first you remove it from the gross amount. Then now you can tax whatever that remains now, basically. So that's what was done last year, December, by the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2024. I know there was a bit of like 1 or 2 months where basically the same base were being taxed actually. Yeah, and I think that was really corrected in December 2024.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that, I think there's an amendment also to a proposal currently that mandates employers or requires employers to factor in all those deductions that they should, in terms of affordable housing levy, SHIF, and all kinds of reliefs. Because mostly you'll find that most employers just grant you the 2,400 that is on account of personal relief. All the rest, I think you declare them and therefore end up in a refund position, a refund that you'll never get from you guys. But anyway, that's it.
That sounded personal. Daktari.
Thanks. It's really a learning session here. For me, I approach, I don't want to go for the textbook definition of double taxation, but for me, how double taxation looks like is I'm already taxed 30%, for some of us up to 35% of our income to be able to take care of healthcare, but then I'm still taxed 2.75% of my still, regardless of whether it is before or after, all that is just math we calculate, to provide the same healthcare. But worse, that I still have to go to a private institution where I have to contribute to a private scheme for healthcare, because if I go to a health facility that is public, I will not find the service. For me, that is, there's no better that I have to pay for education, but still have to take my children to a private school, not because I don't want to take them to a public school, but either that public school is completely full, you have 110 kids in a class, even if you brought your child, the teacher asks you, nitamweka wapi? But you have already contributed your taxes for education. For me, that is double taxation. Whichever way you look at it, it's me being able to contribute to pay my taxes, but still have to meet the cost of maintaining my parents or my grandparents at home when they should actually be earning a pension that is sufficient. For me, I think that's why it becomes, when you talk about the tax morale, for me, it's really, there are things KRA cannot fix. And one of those things that KRA cannot fix is that KRA cannot improve the morale of citizens to pay their taxes if they are not getting services. Because taxes is not an end in itself. And perhaps I think part of the biggest challenge we've had is where taxes is seen as just a means of government getting revenue without the reciprocal responsibility of providing the services. And I want now to bring in the issue of the MPs. So why do MPs go around the villages Matanga and what have you, giving 3, 4, 5 times their monthly income to all these causes. I think anybody who does the math does not need to know that this is just public money that is being distributed through social mechanisms. So we have CDF, the Constituency Development Fund. This year alone is going to be distributing about 58 billion Kenya shillings.
Mind you, it's unconstitutional.
Yes, let's start there. It's unconstitutional. It's been passed by the Constitution, by the courts that it's unconstitutional. But we are disbursing 58 billion through CDF. We are further disbursing, and I forget the figure, Fidan will just check for me, through the national government affirmative fund for the women representatives at the county.
Which is also unconstitutional.
Then we want to introduce one for senators. A senator's oversight of, I'm just talking about the numbers as they are. At the county level, the MCAs want a ward development fund. Not want, have been implementing through different names. Then you also have governors' funds. Now, why have I figured all those numbers? Today, one of the biggest mechanisms that is argued that is a way of contributing is through school bursary. Bursaries to children in high schools and contribution. Now, the Ministry of Education already has money for capitation. Capitation basically money that is allocated per child, so per head count, to provide to that school. So you ask yourself, between, and we did our math, 61% of those funds that are bursary are being managed outside the education system.
Hey.
Now, these are numbers that are already in record. They are being managed outside the education system. What does it mean outside the education system? It's me, member of Kaspul, Kabondo, and this is just an example, Rongai, where I come from. I come and I give bursaries to students, but this is not factored in anywhere by the schools in terms of records to know huyu mtoto amepewa bursary na CDF. Then the same child would be appearing in another record, has received from the MCA. The same child has been receiving from the governor. The same child has been receiving from the president's scheme, because all these are bursaries. Now the question is, with that kind of, so when we're talking about corruption, when we're talking about this money that is being disbursed by politicians, it's the same public money because they're not giving it from their pockets.
They're giving it from ours.
Yes, it's our money, as it were. And I can go into the healthcare system, I can go to roads, and a lot of questions are around there. But then the second question you asked me, is there sufficient engagement on budget estimates? I actually want to say, I'm one of the happiest people that from 2023, a lot of us as Kenyans have woken up to the reality that this is our money. Now, why do I say that? I've been in this work from 2005. And I know many times when it was 3 of us, 5 of us, 10 people going to make submissions in parliament. And asking people, come and make contribution. Guys are like, for what, So participation in terms of numbers has been going up. What has not changed is the mechanism through which that information, that input, is considered, and there is a rationale given. I think Faidan did talk about that. Rationale given as to why we made this decision and not this one. However, when you look at the budget policy statement, and you look at the 2 reports of the finance committees and the budget and appropriations committees, these are the committees that basically look at our budgets. They've been making effort to document what public input gave. What we still need some work to do is how that public input informed the final decisions. Because I think that connection needs to be there. But the second part that has not improved is what I'm calling the accountability questions, especially what needs to be transpiring in parliament. Now, because of the money that is available to our representatives, it has become like a blackmail, kifunga macho, as it were, that then they cannot ask the hard questions. And every time you realize when MPs ask the hard questions, it's either because CDF has been delayed. I don't know whether you...
Yes, I noticed, yeah.
And when the CS comes and says, your CDF is going to, in fact, there's a time he said CDF has been disbursed in totality. I don't know whether people caught that. Now, that statement was just not a statement of accountability. It was simply to say what was making you make noise has been addressed. You can as well now go quiet, go check your accounts. Your accounts are okay. You can now go. And that has affected accountability in a very significant way. Because all other agencies of accountability, that is the Controller of Budget and the Office of the Auditor General, are releasing reports upon reports upon reports. Now, these reports, who consumes them? It's Parliament, particularly the National Assembly. They're the ones who are supposed to consume this information, process it, decide, not decide, already if money has been misappropriated in a certain agency or a department or a ministry, hold that person accountable. So be it in healthcare, be it in agriculture, be it in environment, whatever it is, hold that person accountable. So for me, unless you fix this accountability question, then participation becomes meaningless. Because why should I go and say, this school, we don't have enough books for the number of children, only to be told money was disbursed, but I am saying I am a parent in that school, I have not seen the books. But on the other hand, I'm being told, no, money was disbursed. Who then, where do I take this matter? But there is hope, so that at least I close this on hope. I think there is hope in the sense that because we are operating in a political system, I think the more many of us ask questions about public services without being held back by the fact that we can provide for ourselves those services. What do I mean? A lot of us who earn well or pretend to earn well, I say that because COVID showed us a lot of us don't actually earn well. We are just one salary away from poverty. It's the truth. We go and create a gated community. So instead of asking the city council or the county council or whatever county we live in, why water services are not being provided, what do? We go and sink a borehole in that gated community. So we have water. Now, instead of asking why the health center in that area is not working, we build our own hospital dispensary inside the gated community. We go even further. We say, are those police, those security guys? You achana nayo. We put our own soldier. Never mind who we put at the gate, but we have a sense we have a soldier pale kwa gate. Yeah? Yes. Masai na rungu, But more importantly, we try to provide for ourselves public services that we have paid for. Yes. We go even further. We go and put cabro that connects from the main tarmac to our estate. To our estate. We go to KPLC and convince them to put a transformer for us that serves our estate. What are we trying to do? If you work out the cost, is that we actually have just gone ahead and provided for ourselves public services that we have paid taxes for, and we don't want to ask questions about those taxes. For me, I think that is where the challenge is, and therefore the more of us can ask these questions, the more of us can engage, knowing very well that it's public services that are nearest to you that actually can save your life on the day of need. I think I stop it there.
Amazing. That was very insightful. I like what you said. Public participation means nothing without accountability. I think that's something that we can all ponder on. And I will invite Leonard to, answer the questions that had been assigned to him. But let's keep asking the questions. I'm seeing the comments, and I will read them after. But let's keep engaging. So yes, back to you.
Thank you, Faith. And I must appreciate what my panelists have said. They have really put in some insights on what happens. And basically, I know I will also want to contribute on the issue of, public participation. Basically, I know it was somebody, I know you called it at some point that it was a bit of cosmetic, but I think it has moved from there a bit. It's not to the level that we wish, but I know there are various strides that has been done. and even the reports that are available in the Parliament website. Some of them, of course, they might not go to the place where we wish them to actually address, but I know it has really moved from one place to another. For us who have been in taxes, we know that when you're dealing with finance bill, you realize that there are a lot of things that have happened. Even I know the finance bill that is likely, the one that is likely to be sent out will be a little bit with modifications, basically from what the public said, basically. So you see that really some of these things are changing from being merely cosmetic to a little bit moving away from what I can call it's a bit now engaged in some way. Now, moving back to what was being asked, is one of the questions is that at what age should we stop paying taxes, basically? And in our law currently, what we have in our law, at some point we add, before December 27th, we add a law where when you are 65 years and above, then your monthly pension, you don't pay taxes. And then what happened with that law now, Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2024 now, it opened up that any pension now, whether it's lump sum or monthly pension now, when you are receiving after retirement being like 20 years in a scheme, then it's tax-free. So it means now going forward, from 27th December of 2024, on pension you don't pay taxes when you're receiving your pension, basically. Whether it's a gratuity, or your monthly pension, or the lump sum pension that you all understand. But I know there's some cure that is being done in the finance bill to address the gratuity coming from private schemes. That was not addressed in the tax laws, and I know they were trying to address that, which basically means now there's an equal treatment of gratuity coming from a public pension and the one that coming from a private scheme. But basically pension now will be equally exempt, which means you are exempted when you're contributing. When you are also, when the insurance or the schemes, the pension schemes are investing in whatever investments, then it's also exempt at that point. Then which means at withdrawal, which means you, as you are getting the money, whether it's monthly, whether it's lump sum, it's equally also exempt. That's one of the things that the government has done to address the senior citizens, basically, which means we assume that senior citizens have worked all their life. So they need this money for medicine, they need this money for their social life, and they need this money to live at least at some, we can call it a better life, because they have either worked all their life, either in private or public sectors. And this is what the government is trying to address, to ensure that there's a bit of social justice at the end of the period of retirement.
Allow me to interrupt you a bit. So just for clarification, because this senior citizen, I think she also mentioned something about rental income. So is it just the pension that is exempt, or when they are filing their rental, there's an age factor? Maybe you can tell us a bit more.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just putting in one perspective on what the government has done in terms of ensuring that if you are retiring after being in a scheme for 20 years, this is what the government has done. Now, income, basically, as you look at what I would wish to just still go back to what Article 201 says. Article 201 says we need to share the taxation burden either equally and equitably. Secondly, I know some years back, you remember that the president, the deputy president, and even the members of parliament, I know Dr. Abraham or Dr. Ruko will tell you that they never used to pay taxes, basically, at some point. They never used to pay, before pre-2010 constitution, basically. So they could have their salary and they don't pay taxes. So what the law has done, basically, is that it doesn't matter your status in the community. It doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter kind of the racial, the age, the level in the society. Basically, what the law says is that we need to share equally. It doesn't matter how. Remember that when you are at that age, basically, maybe at an example, I think they have used like 80 years, 70 years, you have a rental income. Mr. Kimani has a rental income at 30 years. So you want to say the elderly person should not pay taxes, but Kimani will pay taxes. But both of them will use the same electricity. Both of them will use the services that the Dr. said here, the dispensary, the roads, and all these other things. So what the law basically provides is that, remember at that point, you are not working, but you are earning rental income. So what the law is basically that rental income are taxed equally. It doesn't matter who earns that income. Because income must be taxed equitably, because there are various ways of ensuring that we achieve equity. Whether we do horizontal equity or we do vertical equity. Basically means you earn the more you earn, you need to be taxed more. Secondly, I'm earning the same income. which is rental income. Why should I be taxed more? The other person is not taxed, basically. And the only people who are really the government has get at, basically, is, for example, the people living with disabilities, where they are given as an exemption to a certain level, like 150,000 in a month, they don't pay. On all their total incomes up to 150,000 in a month. If they only have employment income of 150, they don't pay taxes, basically. So that's one of the groups that the government has also taken care of, because these are vulnerable groups. Then secondly, basically is to ensure also that we don't have what you call tax planning. Remember that there's issues to do with tax planning. If I know that if I get 80 years, then I don't need to pay taxes, what am I going to do? You and myself will give all the things to our grandparents. So who will pay the taxes for the government? Is the grandparent going to pay the taxes for the government? Because the properties will be owned now the grandparents. So there's always a lot of issues with taxation, because people can characterize and people can plan around that money. Because I will transfer everything to my grandfather. He's 80 years and above. Please deal with it. But the money is mine.
I think, but that plays on to what you're saying about tax morale, which links to what Dr. was saying.
Yes.
We are not seeing services. So why am I going to pay taxes when I can go build my own road, create my own school, build my own hospital,
Yes.
get all of those services for myself? So it's still, the issue still goes back to governance and how our resources are managed and stewarded by those in politics or in power.
In fact, what I wanted to, maybe it's something also I want to talk, before I come to that question of yours, basically, I know Dr. has said it, and I know my colleagues will try to explain further on how that works also, is that I know there's something you talked about, motor vehicles,
Yes.
CSRP.
Yes, yes.
And so this is one of the, it went also through public participation as well, since last year, May, up to now, but basically, I know when you look at even there is clips that have been, comments that have been given by our commissioner on the same issue, basically on why this is being introduced, basically. The challenge basically has always been, if you are to give the actual cost that you incur on a vehicle, people will not give the actual amount they incurred on purchasing a vehicle. They would rather allow KRA evaluation to do the evaluation on that vehicle, basically, which at the end of the day, you realize the actual amount paid is always higher than what has been valued. So CSRB is a compromise among the two. But we've been using CSRB since it's one of the evaluation methods. So the one that we've actually using before this one that's coming into effect from July, we used the one from 2018, 2019. How many years are those? 6, 7 years ago. And there's always inflation that comes in with all these prices. So some of these things that are being taken care of, one of them is inflation. And secondly, to ensure that also it ensures its place of around in ensuring that we're also ensuring that there's a balance between both sides. One, the actual price. Two, valuation, which is CSRP, that's being used for motor vehicles. But I don't want to comment more about that, because I know my commissioner has commented more about that one. And even come into the public media, TVs and many other, to just try and explain about this thing. Then there's something I know Madam Tande has talked about, basically. Now, I know the other young faith said something on their 4 stages or fourfold issues in terms of budget. So where KRA comes in basically is one critical thing, is revenue collection. We have also an MDA, and we have also to ensure that...
What's an MDA?
Ministries, departments, and agencies. So we are an agency of government. Second, which basically means we are also required to ensure that we have accountability on the resources we are given. We are also given resources basically by government, which means when the National Treasury formulates, we give our proposals, which is the executive. The person that approves is Parliament that says, KRA, we have been given this amount of billions. So this is for your staff, this is for your development expenditures, this is what you need to do for your systems and all those things. And we are accountable for that amount, basically. So our mandate basically is a little bit limited. And we can't speak on what has gone to, for example, central bank. If I was to tell you that whatever that has been collected from your payslip, the only thing we do is accounting, basically. The money goes to the exchequer, 100%. So there's somebody who is actually supposed to speak on the other side of the river. I'm on this other side of the river. So there's somebody I'm the one who just put a pot just to ride the boat on, and then allow somebody to sail the boat on the other side. So I've brought the boat into the water, somebody else sails the boat on the other side. And that's how the government functions works. So for us, basically, our mandate basically is to collect the revenue on behalf of the government. And that's our mandate. There's nothing else we do. Is to collect and account and advise on issues to do with tax administration, basically. And that's how our mandate as KRA stops in. But I know we are, because we are also government, we are required that we also talk about this sector, because these are the sector I know that most of you are interested in, which basically I may not be very competent to talk about, because I'm also a beneficiary of some of the budgets that is coming in, because we are the one implementing some of the budgets, and we are implementing to make sure that we are also accountable on that budget, and we also appear in Parliament for the same budget, the National Assembly, to talk about how as KRA spend their own budget that has been allocated. But there are people who are supposed to approve, there are people who are supposed to do oversight, there are people who are supposed to verify, there are supposed to people who are supposed to audit from that budget to make sure that we are also seeing those kind of things that you guys are wishing to see. And at times we had a proposal to make sure that if anything is billed, then this needs to say, these are your taxes, basically. Everything that is done. Because 95% of what is being used in this country, apart from debt, is these taxes. So we need to see if a building is built, if there's a gate that is contracted by anybody, then this will say these are your taxes. The way you see it on the road, that this is what has been used on the road is your fuel, your petroleum, levy has been used to maintain this road. So we expect also that your taxes has been used to build this school, for example, so that you're able to improve your tax morale that I was talking about. When you see it, I know when you see written that these are your taxes, and you drink water from that kind of thing, you are very happy because these are your taxes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you to everyone who is commenting and engaging. I'm seeing your comments and your questions. Thank you so much. We have a request that if you're commenting or if you're asking a question through the Zoom platform, you use the Q&A segment so that we are able to track your question. And maybe just to do a recap for those who have joined us in between, we are discussing the Finance Bill 2025 and the issues that surround it. What is the Finance Bill supposed to achieve? And we've been able to answer that the Finance Bill is part of the budgeting cycle. So we've been able to discuss what the budgeting cycle looks like, what is tax justice, and other questions that we have. And I think we've been able to see commendably that this year's Finance Bill is significantly different from last year. And we can see that most of the controversial issues that we saw last year were geared towards collecting revenue so that the government can have disposable income for its budget. But this year's Finance Bill is geared towards raising expenditure for administrative purposes. And I'd like to just sample a few more comments because our time is soon winding up. So we'll have a few more questions before we can give our closing remarks. I see a very interesting question over here, and I think I'll ask Daktari. Sorry? Any questions from our live audience? I see we have 1, 2, so 3. Yes, so I'm going to ask, we're going to ask someone to pass the mic. As we get the mics towards them, allow me to sample a few more questions, maybe 3 more questions and comments. I see John Wesley saying, indeed we should have all bursary funds channeled to fund a free education initiative. I see someone asking a very good question. This is Georgina. Dr. maybe you'll help us answer this. Is our budget for this financial year 2025-2026 being supported by debt, or are we moving to more debts using the budget? In other words, is it moving us to self-sufficiency or more debts down the line? I think that's a very good question. There are some people, I see Sami Kimango saying that, talking about the double taxation, or rather the taxation and that we have already discussed. I see someone asking, please elaborate on new taxes introduced to construction projects. I think, Leonard, you can assist us with that. Wakili, you can take this one from Maggie. Please comment on the tax advantages for the disabled in Kenya, and perhaps maybe a guidance on how they can go about it. I also see someone asking, clarify the essence of NSSF Act, putting into consideration that most of the private companies have private pensions. Is this a way of killing the private pension schemes? So I think we recently had a court ruling that allowed tier 2 to be remitted to private schemes. So maybe you can tell us how that is working at the moment. Very, very many comments. I see a lot of people. Manka, I see Daniel, Maggie, thank you for your comments. Thank you for your engagement. Sharon asks a question, still on the debt. So, Doctor, you can take this. Bearing the reality on our taxes, could the panel please help us digest and break down the debt management plan by the government in the budget 2025-2026? How does the government intend to address the growing and accumulated national debts? So I think we'll take that now from our social media handles and CITAM Church Online over to our audience, and we'll start with the lovely gentleman here. You'll pass the mic to the next person.
All right, good discussion. I'm learning a lot. My name is Robert Mwangi. I'm the author of 3 books, President Advisor, Money Circles, and 5 Fingers. That addresses some of the questions that we're asking here, and I have a few questions. So one is...
Allow me to limit you to 2, please.
Okay.
Just 2, yeah.
Just 2 questions, okay. So I'll be very brief. The first question, I will start with a comment. If the bride is in ICU, should the wedding committee continue planning for the wedding? I feel like Kenya is in ICU. And we with a budget deficit of 30%, almost 1 trillion shillings, when the government is raiding the banks to finance its budget, over 600 billion, when the government is raiding private contractors, about 600 billion every year in pending bills, isn't it, couldn't we say that the bride, Kenya, is in ICU? Shouldn't we be focused on the fact that this country is collapsing?
Thank you.
Collapsing, that 75% of the Gen Zs do not have employment. They have been forced. People who have college degrees are working as hawkers, peddling merchandise in informal sector. And indirectly, the government, because cannot continue to raid the pay slips, has now decided to raid you when you're checking out at the supermarket on the receipt, what we call indirect taxes. So this is a question. Is it tax justice? When we indirectly tax people in the so-called informal sector, but what we've actually done is somebody, let me give an example, somebody who is earning, if somebody who is earning 10,000 shillings, a quick example, and pays 1,000 shillings in cumulative tax in what is being called levies and all these things. That's how much? That's 10%. A poorer person, a boda guy, mama boga, who is earning how much? 5,000. To them, paying the same 1,000, that's 20%. Is that tax justice?
Thank you.
Or are we not raiding the very poor people that we should be creating economic conditions to elevate this economy? My last comment is this. If a police, a rogue police, gives you painkiller before torturing you, can they claim that they were being fair to you? When this government is going ahead and taking more taxes, it's almost like they're telling you now, we were cutting, so CS Bandi said that we are not going to be raiding your pay slips. But basically it's what the government is saying, in another, I speak in figures of speech, is saying, last year and the previous years, we were cutting your thumb, but we are done doing that. We're going to be cutting your pointing fingers.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a lot to think about.
Thank you very much.
1 minute, please, in interest of time.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, our host and panelist. I think I had two questions, but Mwangi has already highlighted one, which is on tax justice. But I just wanted to configure, because we were discussing, I had actually trying to relate on reciprocation of what is being collected and the services we get as citizens of this country. So maybe Mr. Lena can give us a configuration on what operational cost does a KRA incur, maybe on a financial year. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank
My
you.
name is Maxwell. I'm a finance guy.
Thank you, Maxwell. I think we have a very last...
I also have a question.
Okay, let him go first.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Kenneth Kissinger. This goes to my lovely friend from our lovely entity, KRA. There's a question that you have not answered. You have tried to veer away from, and I want to take you back there. Explain to me why, when the Alto, the famous car that our Uber drivers use, came into Kenya, it was at 400 and something thousand Kenya shillings. And now that car goes for 1.2, 1.5 M, somewhere around there. Explain to me why, when new cars come into the country, they're quite affordable. But when people start buying those cars, all of a sudden, the car becomes a pain in our ass. We now start buying second-hand cars from, dealers and all. We start going to a lovely place looking for cars and everything. Is it that KRA are okay having old cars on the road? Don't we just like new things, wonderful things on the road and all? So I really want to understand that point. 2, if we are having malicious prosecution from your body, for example, then who do we run to? Yes.
Thank you. I think we will quickly answer the questions that we have received. Our time is pretty much up, so I'd like to ask you to summarize your answer and give your parting shot at the same time. So we can start with you. Summarize. I know you've been asked a lot of things.
Thank you. I've been asked a lot of things. So let me just go straight to it. I know somebody asked on issues to do with construction sector.
Yes.
Yeah, there are a few things that was not really introduced. Some of them were being either eliminated or some of them are being recharacterized in terms of when I say zero rating or exempt. So there's also what we call export and investment promotion levy that was actually reduced from 17.5% to 10%. Which basically, that's a proposal in the bill, which means things to do with steel and wire rods are being, the price is actually likely to change, because if the proposal is to reduce from 17.5% to 10%, that's the tax that was there. So that's a proposal, which means when you're buying steel and steel bars will actually reduce by a certain amount if that one goes through. Then there are certain things that had been proposed, like we used to have a lower rate of tax for those who are constructing what we call affordable housing units, basically low-cost housing units, that had been proposed to be scrapped, but I know Parliament wants to reverse it. So that was what I read from the consideration in Parliament. So that's one of them. Then there are issues like certain goods or there are goods imported or purchased locally for affordable housing program. I think that one also was to be taxed from 2026 1st July, but I think also that's likely to be reversed as well from what we are likely to see from the Act, which basically will have a status quo. And then there are things like plastics, that is, plastics coming out of the country will also be imposed an excise duty, which means basically we are discouraging things coming in, but we want manufacturing on certain things like plastics or polythene paper, things that can be used basically in terms of like plastics, for example, self-adhesive plastics, so can be manufactured internally. This is basically just to protect the market. But generally, you will see that there are no taxes being introduced basically apart from those few changes, but some of them are likely to be status quo, which means basically nothing will change apart from wire rods or steel bars, which is likely to come from 17.5% to 10%. Now, there are some things that Robert has asked, tax justice, which means you gave an example of 10,000 where somebody is taxed at 10%, somebody else pays 1,000, somebody else pays 2,000, basically it's 20%. Yes. Yes, 1,000. Yes, yes, with different income. So what happens is that what the law, the way it has been structured somehow is that we have also a specific regime for informal sector, which basically if you are an informal sector between 1 million to 25 million, you pay 1.5% of your gross. So just to avoid all these issues with Before and after the finance bill. There are taxes before and after the finance bill. As we sit here, the finance bill has not yet been accepted in the Senate. But the taxes will be. So I know no one is happy to go to work. Taxes. But it's a means of what happens because you are generating economic activity.
Allegedly.
Then, lastly, since we are in a church podium, not a pulpit, this is the podium, basically is that I know this is one of the important forums that can actually promote and shape public values. I know you have the moral authority, you have the moral accountability in issues to do with governance. So if you can be able to also speak on such forums, they can be able to also, because you have moral authority. I'm not expecting the MP to come and speak to you. You will not listen. You will start echoing and doing other things. So we expect that this is you have that moral authority, you have that moral accountability to actually shape some of these public values. And we hope that such engagements can help us promote a lot of things, whether it's budget literacy, tax issues to do with tax literacy, issues to do with budget, issues to do with anything on governance, on how our resources are being used. I think this is the best platform that we can use going forward to improve on many other things and deeds that maybe we have not done right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
In fact, in some cases, we have adjusted our expenditure patterns. So what that is happening is that we therefore are running, literally running on, if you think about it. Because if 30%, if 60% of what you collect already goes to paying debt, so you're left with 40 bob. This 40 bob, do you put it to education? Do you send it to counties? Where do you take it? Which is the priority that you take it? So therefore you have to borrow to even pay salaries for government officials, as it were. And we've done. So for me, I think it's not tenable. There's going to be a breaking point. And we don't need to look further. Countries like Ghana got there, countries like Greece got there, countries like Argentina got there, and it's not neat. And perhaps one of the things that has been out there, can we start having conversations on how perhaps we can restructure our debt repayment so that then we pay longer, we may end up paying more, but we pay in chunks that are manageable. But as we do that, let's address not accumulate more debt at the rate at which we are accumulating it. Because I think, I mean, if you're trying to get out of a hole, the first thing you try to do is to borrow less as you try to sort out how you sort out your other debt. But otherwise, I mean, the rate at which we are going, there's going to be a breaking point. And it's coming, definitely, unless we actually do. So that's my answer around the question that was asked around public debt. There's a bigger conversation that we can have around it. My parting shot is really that one was that unless there is accountability of how public resources are being utilized, unless there is rule of law on people who are misusing public resources, unless there is a reward system for people who are doing the right thing, because we spend a lot of time discussing the bad guys. We don't spend a lot of time celebrating the good guys. The reason why this country is standing is because they are public servants, including in the police force or police service, who do the right thing even under very difficult circumstances. You do not want to wish they were not there. Because imagine every police officer you met is a rogue police officer who shoots people on broad daylight. Imagine every KRA officer you meet is the one who wants to extract from you. And there are several. I mean, we receive demand notices. Even for taxes, we know we have paid. Imagine the doctor you meet wants to sell your kidney without your permission. Now imagine it's everyone you meet. So let us celebrate guys who are doing the right thing. Let us encourage them. And part of encouraging them is speaking out loudly. So do not be lied to that asking for accountability is pointing your finger at the God's anointed, or it's going against authority. No, I disagree with that. Asking for accountability is your contribution to building a godly kingdom. In fact, I think for me it's the answer to let your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I think that's the only way we get to achieve it. Thank you.
Amen, amen. Yes, thank you so much, Daktari. I think that was a very powerful parting shot. Allow me to skip Washera because the Gen Z will have to go last.
Thank you. I think the question that was to answer was with respect to the tax incentives that are accorded to people with disabilities or otherwise people with special abilities. And I think one of it was alluded to by Leonard when he spoke about the, that the first 150,000 Kenya shillings per month of such persons, are exempt from taxation. And also once, when they free. But definitely, it doesn't just come automatically. You have to follow the procedures. You have to apply for a certificate. You have to be granted that certificate. And even before that certificate is granted, there must be some, medical, reasons behind that and ascertained by approved or rather by certified doctors or medical officials. So it is not as automatic, but at least they are there to try and promote what we were just talking about, equity, about taxation, because they are just able differently and they have to be brought at par with other ordinary kind of, those who are on this other side. I think as a parting shot, this has been more like a learning experience even for me, and it's amazing to be, in the presence of the panelists and the audience. And I think I will borrow from what Daktari has said. From where I come from, this saying that an antelope hits more he or she who shouts at it than the one who is chasing it. I mean, so let's keep shouting. I mean, if that is what will make things work, then let's shout. And even as we shout, I mean, there's also that saying that says, even if you're running after that antelope, don't just get distracted by the mere sight of a squirrel, And I guess that tallies with what Leonard was saying and Daktari, that we will still encounter issues. Let's appreciate the good while still getting to shout at the bad, but it is a process. Looking back, I think I would go back from around 2015. That's when I would try to, take this public participation journey up to this far. I think each and every year, definitely there are some positives, and more so from the perspective of public participation. It is not just a tick-the-box regime. I just hope, pray, and wish that most of those recommendations that have been made by the finance and finance committee, to drop some of the proposals that are causing friction will be adopted. I know there will be a flip side on the revenue aspect, but at least it shows the goodwill of the government, the National Assembly, the legislature and the executive, to just listen to the masses, or rather to the public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Please, let's appreciate him for that. Washera, on to you, and maybe as you give us your parting shot, we'd like to hear from you. What more can we do as the church? Last year we said occupy churches. We are here, we've occupied the church. What next?
Okay, I'm going to start with what you said by appreciating the good. So the fact that we're here today is a huge step. Last year, this never happened. I feel like this conversation should have been had last year when that finance bill was there, because the education that we've all learned, including all of us here, has been very transformative and important. As someone who studied development and social sciences and studied the way society works, in Kenya, we are losing all the third spaces that our parents' generation had in terms of places to do public participation, and that's why there was a gap in such a long time where there was only like the good guys doing the necessary work to make this country work. And the only third spaces that have been left are institutions like the church. But the church has been sleeping for some reason. You've been comfortable in your own little kingdom hangover. But now, because of the, for lack of a better word, the injection that young people have been doing, because of the conviction that we have felt, because you have educated us so well on what the word says, you do have a moral obligation to convict, to educate, and to ensure that your congregation knows what is happening. Just as you said, yes, we do have, the church has a moral obligation, and it's about time the church stops cowering from that. As much as you're saving souls to go to heaven, we are also struggling here, and we need that support. There's a verse in the Bible, I can't remember, I think it's from Matthew, where it asks, if your child comes and asks you for bread, are you going to give them a stone? That's how I've been feeling. The church you go, you're taught, oh, God is coming, oh, you need to be saved by the grace. Yes, but what about my needs for tomorrow? I could be saved by the grace today and I die tomorrow because I don't have food. Or because I'm walking in the streets as a young people and I get shot by the cops. Mm-hmm. That's the reality. Yeah. The other reality we need to wake up to, which is why I said this conversation should have been had last year, is that we are living in a lawless state. That's just the reality. It breaks my heart to say this, but the happenings that have happened in the last couple of months have really just, I'm like, what? How? I'm at a loss for words for what is happening in this country. And we'll continue kidding ourselves by saying, oh, we'll trust in these institutions. I'm really sorry for you working in KRA, but yeah, we'll trust in these institutions. We'll trust in the agencies that are there. But the reality is we live in such a huge state of lawlessness that majority of us young people have apathy. And apathy is such a bad place to be in. However, apathy for me, which is, I can also translate it in matters of faith, is like doubt, which for me is the other side of faith. Doubt makes you ask questions. The book of Proverbs asks us to look for knowledge and to gain understanding. If you create a space for us to ask those questions and to have that intellectual stimulation, then you can guide us to the conclusion that will be not only good for you as the church, but for us as a collective. You said, your kingdom come and your will be done here on earth as it is in heaven. How do we create those spaces for us to go through those troubling questions? Because us young people are apathetic, man. That's why we're okay with going out there and getting shot. Like, there's no future for us. That's the reality. So until the leaders of the church and the congregation realizes where we are as young people and start acting accordingly, then we will see a change. So again, I'm very grateful that we are here, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And what more can be done is having people like this panel. Hey, see, I've been educated, I've been encouraged, we know there are good people in government, we know there are good people in agencies, celebrating those people that are there. And those people are part of our congregations because of what our teachers of the word have been teaching and telling you to do. So you live out your faith as you're working. So how can we have more platforms where we're able to sit down like this and converse and come up with solutions? Because I don't know how as a church we'll continue living in a state of lawlessness, yet we're kidding ourselves. Like we're just, I don't know how to explain it. It's like we're being delusional, let me just say. That's the reality. We're being delusional. So until we come to that harsh reality and we act upon it, tutaendelea tu just having conversations, sending thoughts and prayers as usual, and releasing statements after statements. But until there's action, until your faith is backed up with action, we're not going to go anywhere as a country. So what more we can do, going back to the conversation about the third spaces, is realizing the church, the institution of the church has access to buildings like this that people can use. You have access to land and places like where people can come together and have, I don't know, people's assemblies. The only other places that I've been seeing that is in civil society. But like the church has, like you have the resources to do that. We keep complaining that, oh, the younger generation is not coming to church, oh, I don't know this, that. I'm like, yeah, bring them in by listening to what they want to, like what they've been asking questions about. Like I grew up in church. I know the word. We memorized the word. We know what the doctrines are. However, we want to see it happen. We want to see it in action. And that, thank you. And that looks like even changing the way you do missions. Something really interesting is the way CITAM does missions in Northern Kenya. Sorry, I'm going on, but like, in Northern Kenya. Initially in Achas Post, they created a church, and then they realized, hey, people just come here, eat, and then go. There's a lack of services there because the government is not doing its job. So one of the things that CITAM started working on is like, oh, look, these people need healthcare. They need schools. They need places to generate sources of income. That is a way of ministering to your people. It's not all the time telling them, oh, you're going to hell, oh, believe in Jesus. You meet them at their point of need. And my favorite story in the Bible is when Jesus was at the well with this lady, and he met her at her point of need. She was deep in sin. He knew her history, because he's God, he knew her history. But he didn't start telling her, you sleep around with people, you do this, instead of condemning, he was like, look, I know your story. You're looking for water, but I can give you living water. Again, when your children come to you and they ask for bread, will you give them a stone? That is it.
Wow. I had a whole speech of how I was going to conclude, but I think Washera has done it. She's done it. I'd like to appreciate each and every person. Thank you to my panelists. Can we appreciate them a bit more? Yes, even those of us on Zoom, let me see your emojis, let me see your comment section. For those of us who are on YouTube, thank you to our studio audience. Panelists, maybe we can appreciate these people for being here. There are people who are behind the camera. Thank you so much. I'd like to also appreciate our online audience, those who are following us on Zoom, on social media, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Thank you so much for your engagement. We've tried our best to answer all the questions, but this is just an invitation to have this discussion. So if you have more questions, keep reaching out, and through the Social Action and Advocacy Ministry, we'll be able to organize another forum or another engagement for this. I'd also like to thank our partners, because this webinar has not only been attended by CITAmites, but also other members of the body of Christ. So special shout out to the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, together with the Kenya Christian Professional Forum. Thank you so much for the mobilization that you've done for this. I'd also like to thank the CITAM Church online platform for giving us the equipment that we needed to air this. We would have come here and just sat, but you people have gone ahead and mobilized on our behalf. Thank you also for the people who gave us the opportunity to sit here. And my parting shot comes from the book of Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17. It says, learn to do good, seek justice, help the oppressed, defend the cause of orphans, and fight for the rights of widows. I have been your moderator this evening. Thank you so much for your time. May God bless you, and may God bless Kenya. Oh, okay. I think we can believe and pray. Dear and everlasting